I was escorted out of the building like a criminal. No warning, no explanation, just a termination letter and 2 cold eyes from HR. An hour earlier, I had turned down lunch with my boss. Again. And that's when I knew this wasn't about performance. This was punishment. My inbox wiped. Project access revoked. A junior manager had already stepped into my role. Every move felt rehearsed, like they'd been planning this. I looked around, hoping for a glance, a nod, something. But nothing. Colleagues who once asked me for advice now looked right through me, like I didn't even exist. And then I remembered his words, whispered just a week ago. I like loyalty, Holly. I reward it. This isn't just a story about losing a job. It's a story about resilience. About how saying no to power can cost you everything. Unless you fight back, this story will make you angry at how far injustice can go. Make you cheer when justice finally strikes back. And stay with you through a twist you won't see coming. So before we dive in, grab a cup of tea. Turn up the volume. And don't forget to tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The night it all truly began, I was standing by the buffet table balancing a glass of cheap champagne and a fake smile. It was the annual holiday party, a night meant to celebrate our hard work. But for me, it became something else entirely. Our CEO, Mr. Langford, had always been charming in that rehearsed boardroom kind of way. But that night he was different. Louder, looser, and his compliments, they had an edge. Too personal, too public. And let's not forget Holly, he said into the mic, raising his glass, whose strategic mind is only matched by those unforgettable green eyes. The room burst into laughter. I didn't. My face flushed, but I smiled anyway. What else could I do? He was my boss. People clapped, some awkwardly. A few women exchanged glances I didn't understand. Back then. One even whispered to me later, "Watch yourself. You're the new favorite." After that night, the invitations started. Private dinners, mentorship chats over wine, weekend strategy sessions at places that didn't even serve lunch. I declined. Every single one. Politely. But each time I said no, something shifted. An email I sent went unanswered. A meeting I was supposed to lead reassigned. Deadlines moved without notice. And I was always the last to know. Then came the compliments. In private. Soft. Sticky. Words meant to blur the lines. "You carry yourself with such grace," he said once, standing just a little too close. His hand lingered just a little too long on my arm. And when I stepped back, the smile faded. "You don't seem to understand how this place works," he said low and flat. I tried to laugh it off. Tried to stay professional. Told myself it would pass if I just kept my head down. But it didn't pass. The air thickened. With tension. With silence. People stopped talking when I walked into a room. My calendar cleared while theirs overflowed. It was like being erased. One tiny humiliation at a time. But this was just the beginning. The party, that was the performance. The real power play was only just starting. And the next move, it would push me even deeper into the dark. And yet it was that darkness that finally forced me to strike back. But not yet. First, I had to survive what came next. After the holiday party, everything changed, but quietly. No announcements. No confrontations. Just absence. Meetings I used to be part of gone from my calendar. Files I needed for ongoing projects suddenly reassigned. My team, the very people I had trained and mentored, stopped updating me. Tasks floated away, like balloons I couldn't catch. I asked my manager if there had been a reshuffle. He gave me a flat smile. "You've seemed distracted lately. Leadership needs more focus." Distracted. That word stuck like a thorn. I hadn't missed a deadline. I hadn't made a single error. But I had started saying no, and in this company, no was a threat. Then came the HR meetings. Small ones at first. Just touching base, they said. We've received some concerns. Concerns about what I asked. Just, your fit with the team. Your energy. I left those meetings feeling foggy. Like I'd done something wrong but couldn't quite name it. The worst part? The coldness. Coworkers who once laughed with me in the break room now kept their eyes glued to their screens. Someone must have said something. Or maybe they were told. Not to associate with me. That's how it felt. Like I was radioactive. Even my work came under fire. My performance review, vague criticisms. Not collaborative, resistant to feedback. This after I had led one of the most successful campaigns last quarter. But that success now credited to the team. My name quietly removed from the final report. Then one morning I found a printed survey on my desk. Anonymous peer feedback. One note read, Holly is always on edge, hard to work with. Another doesn't contribute much in meetings. Lies. But official lies. Documented. Filed. I sat at my desk staring at that paper feeling like the walls were folding in. This wasn't just professional retaliation. It was personal erasure. But there was one thing they hadn't taken from me, my clarity. I saw what was happening. Even if no one else dared name it. It was time to stop surviving and start documenting. Because if I didn't, I knew exactly where this was headed. And they were already rehearsing the ending. A week after that anonymous feedback landed on my desk, I was summoned to a development conversation. That's what they called it. But when I walked into the room, it felt more like an interrogation. The glass-walled conference room was cold even in the middle of summer. 2 people were already seated, my department head, and an HR rep I barely knew. No coffee, no smiles, just a clipboard, and a phrase I'd come to dread. We just want to understand. Understand what the conversation started politely on the surface, but every question carried a blade. Would you say your communication style is cooperative? Have you noticed how some teammates feel intimidated by your presence in meetings? Do you think maybe you misinterpreted Mr. Langford's intentions at the party? Each one chipped away at my sanity, rewriting facts with a velvet touch. I wasn't being bullied, I was misreading signals. I wasn't being isolated, I was withdrawing. It wasn't happening to me, it was all in my head. Or so they implied. When I tried to respond, the HR rep leaned in. Holly, we're not attacking you. This is a safe space. But you need to reflect. Reflect on how I'd become invisible overnight. But what hurt more than their words was the smugness in the silence between them. They weren't after truth. They were building a case. Quietly, methodically. I was being nudged toward the exit without ever being told to leave. And I realized then this was strategy. They wanted me to question my memory, to doubt my instincts. That's how gaslighting works. Not with shouting, but with erosion. One careful lie at a time. After the meeting, I passed Mr. Langford in the hallway. He didn't look at me, but the corner of his mouth lifted. A smirk. Like a man watching a chess game he already knew he'd win. That night I sat in my car for 30 minutes before driving home. Not crying. Not raging. Just still. Because something had clicked. If they wanted me to doubt myself, they'd failed. What they'd done was wake me up. And the next move, it wouldn't be his. It would be mine. But first I needed help. From someone who'd been here before. And someone was about to reach out. 2 days after that interrogation, I received a message on LinkedIn. It was short. Unsigned at first. Just one sentence. You're not crazy. I've been where you are. At first, I ignored it. Strange messages always float around, especially when your name starts surfacing in office whispers. But then came a follow-up. This time with a name. Maria Chen. She'd been a senior manager at the company 3 years ago, I remembered her vaguely sharp, composed, and then suddenly gone. We spoke over video that night. Maria's voice was calm, but tight, like someone reliving something she'd spent years trying to forget. "Langford did it to me too," she said. "Flattery, offers, pressure, then punishment." She'd turned him down during a conference trip. A week later, she was labeled combative, removed from a major account, and handed a development plan that felt like slow-motion dismissal. When she tried to speak up, she was threatened. Quietly, legally. "You know how they do it," she said. "Performance reviews, whispers to clients. Then they make it look like you left on your own." Maria still had an email thread, subtle, suggestive, but unmistakable in tone. One message from Langford read, "The right kind of loyalty opens doors. The wrong kind finds itself closed." She sent me the screenshot. My hands shook when I opened it. Not because I was surprised, but because it sounded familiar. Almost word for word what he'd told me. What struck me most was Maria's regret. "I stayed quiet," she said. "I just wanted it to stop." But silence didn't protect me. It only protected him. That night something shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. There was a pattern, a history. And maybe I could do what Maria hadn't. But I'd have to be smarter, braver. I couldn't confront this head-on and expect justice. I needed proof. Undeniable proof. I thanked Maria. She offered her support. "Just don't let him bury you like he buried me." The next morning, I dusted off an old voice recorder I'd used back in college lectures. Slipped it into my purse. I knew exactly what I had to do. If they were going to script my downfall, I would write my twist. One they couldn't erase. The next time Langford asked me to lunch, I said yes. He raised an eyebrow, probably surprised after weeks of rejections. Finally, he chuckled. "Let's talk about your future." My hands didn't shake as I picked up my purse, but my stomach twisted. Tucked inside under my wallet was a slim voice recorder. Old, scratched, ready. We met at a quiet, overpriced bistro just 2 blocks from the office. The kind of place with tablecloths, wine pairings, and just enough privacy for powerful men to misbehave. Langford was all charm at first. He asked about my goals, praised my professional maturity, even complimented my poise under pressure. But the shift came somewhere between the appetizer and the main course. "You know, Holly," he said, leaning in, voice low, "I admire women who understand how the game is played. They tend to rise faster." He stirred his drink, eyes locked on mine. "There's loyalty. And then there's chemistry. The best performers understand the difference." I nodded politely. Let the silence stretch. The recorder was running. Every word mattered. Then came the hook, a subtle offer wrapped in vague promises. "You've got potential. More than most, but this industry, it rewards trust, alignment, and discretion." He smirked, reached for his phone and snapped a picture of me across the table. "Just a little memory of our first real conversation," he said. I smiled back, heart pounding. After lunch, as we stepped outside, he placed a hand on my back. Too familiar, too practiced. "I'll be in touch," he whispered. "Big things coming." By the time I got home, I had 2 new emails. One was a calendar invite, a one-on-one strategy session for the following Saturday. The other a text, "You looked stunning today. Keep that smile. It'll take you far." I sat down, replayed the recording, took notes. Clear enough to show intent, subtle enough for him to deny. But this wasn't about convincing him. This was about preparing the world. I forwarded the file to my drive. Then I called Maria. "It worked," I said. "I have it." She exhaled into the phone. "Then it's time. Let's burn the script they wrote for you, and write our own." Filing the claim felt like a small victory, but it was just the first step into a much darker room. My lawyer warned me they won't just deny, they'll attack. And attack. They did. The company responded within 24 hours. Cold, professional. We take all allegations seriously, they said, but we stand by our leadership and their commitment to integrity. Behind closed doors, their legal team was crafting a very different kind of story. It started with photos. A holiday party 2 years ago. I was laughing with coworkers wearing a red dress. Flirtatious, they called it. Then came the emails, harmless casual replies I'd sent to Langford over the years, now pulled out of context. Thanks again for the coffee became encouragement. A smile in a team photo became mixed signals. They painted me as ambitious, manipulative, a woman who used charm when it suited her, and cried foul when it didn't. I watched my personality get rewritten by strangers in suits. Then came the media leak. An anonymous insider described me as emotionally unstable, always fishing for attention. Overnight, my inbox filled with cruelty. You asked for it. Gold digger. Just another woman trying to bring a good man down. At a pre-hearing conference, one of their attorneys said with a smile, "Juries don't like ambiguity, Ms. Monroe. They prefer stories with clear villains. Right now, yours looks blurry." I didn't flinch, not in the room. But later in my car, I broke down. Not because they were winning, but because they were willing to burn down truth for reputation. That night, Maria called. "You holding up?" she asked. "Barely," I said. Then let them push. Because the moment they show the world who they are, you won't need to prove anything. Her words stayed with me. We filed for discovery, pulled internal communications. Deposition dates were set, and quietly I prepared for my next move. This wasn't just about winning a case anymore. It was about exposing a culture. And I had something they didn't, a voice. A recording. A network of women no longer willing to be silent. Next, I'd take that voice somewhere they couldn't control the public. But the way I did it, that would change everything. I didn't want to be the face of anything. Not yet. Not while my credibility was still being shredded behind closed doors. So I posted the recording anonymously. No names, no company, just a caption. When refusing your boss isn't an option. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. People didn't need names to understand. The tone in Langford's voice, the layered implications, the cold familiarity of his words. It hit a nerve. Women from every industry commented, "I've heard that voice. This happened to me too. We believe you." By day 2, Narsh Believe Holly was trending, though no one knew it was me. Yet. Then came the shockwave. An investigative podcast picked up the clip and did the math. They connected the dots past lawsuits, unexplained resignations, and old settlements sealed under an NDA. The patterns were undeniable. The company denied everything. But the internet, it never forgets. And that's when other women began to come forward. One from marketing, one from legal, another from a branch office. Their stories weren't identical, but the rhythm was the same. Flattery, pressure, retaliation, silence. Together we formed a thread that couldn't be untangled. The media caught up. Headlines shifted from corporate Starface's allegations to culture of misconduct exposed. A Change.org petition to remove Langford hit 100,000 signatures in 2 days. Investors started asking questions. Stock prices wobbled. And then finally a press conference. Langford stood behind a podium. Pale, rehearsed. "I never intended harm," he said. "If any of my actions were misinterpreted, I regret that." Misinterpreted. That word again. But this time his charm couldn't save him. A reporter asked about the voice recording. Another about the NDAs. He stumbled. The smirk was gone. Behind the scenes, the board moved fast. Langford was placed on administrative leave pending review. I knew what that meant. They were cutting him loose before the flames reached the foundation. And still I remained anonymous. But not for long. Because sometimes the only way to reclaim your voice is to speak it out loud. The next step wasn't just legal. It was personal. And I was ready. What they thought would shame me had awakened something far more powerful. solidarity. And soon, the world would know my name. I revealed my identity on a Monday. It wasn't dramatic, just a simple post on my page. A caption that read, "My name is Holly Monroe, and I am not afraid anymore." I didn't expect the response. Overnight, thousands of women flooded my inbox, some with stories, some with tears, many with nothing more than 2 words. "Thank you." The company responded quickly. They offered a settlement, high 6 figures. With it came an NDA, a confidentiality clause thick enough to suffocate the truth. I read it once, then again, and then I closed the folder. I wasn't doing this for money. I wasn't fighting to win a case. I was fighting to change the script for women like Maria, for everyone who'd sat in silence thinking it was the only safe choice. So I declined. Instead, I gave my first public interview. Not on TV. Just a podcast hosted by a woman who once lost her job for reporting harassment. We sat in a quiet studio, and I told my story, not as a victim, but as a warning. The clip went viral. From there, the invitations poured in: panels, interviews, keynote stages. Not as the woman who took down a CEO, but as the woman who refused to disappear. A month later, the company rolled out sweeping reforms, new reporting protocols, a third-party oversight committee. Langford officially terminated, his name erased from the leadership page as if he'd never existed. But he had existed, and so had the damage. Still, something beautiful happened next. At a leadership summit, I stood before a crowd of women and told them the truth. Silence is never neutral. It always sides with power. That line became a headline. It ended up on protest signs. Someone even printed it on t-shirts. And maybe the most powerful change, my voice didn't shake anymore. Not when I told the truth. Not when I faced a room. Not when someone tried to interrupt. Because the moment I stopped asking for permission, I got power. And yet one part of the story still needed to be told. Not for the courtroom, not for the cameras, for closure. I'd return to the very place where it all began, with one final message. And that, I promise you, is the ending they never saw coming. 2 months after everything went public, I returned to the building. Not for a meeting. Not for revenge. Just to see it with clear eyes this time. The office tower looked the same, but everything inside me had changed. I stood across the street, coffee in hand, watching the morning crowd shuffle in. Some new faces, some old ones. The same revolving glass doors I used to pass through every day, once with pride, then with dread. And now, with peace. Because I wasn't trying to get my job back. I wasn't hoping for apologies. I had taken my voice back, and I had used it. Inside that building, people whispered less now. HR had new faces. Women had started speaking up. A friend texted me the new hire orientation now included a full section on power dynamics and harassment policies built on lessons from my case. That wasn't revenge. That was change. I wrote a small note on the back of a coffee receipt, then walked across the street, slipped it into the mailbox slot next to the lobby. I don't know who will find it, but I hope they read it. It said, if you stay silent, they win. But if you speak even once, you break their script. Then I walked away. No cameras, no applause. Just me. We often think justice is a courtroom verdict, or a payout, or headlines. But sometimes it's a ripple. Sometimes it's a younger woman who now knows what not to accept. A man who finally questions what he used to laugh at. A policy that protects someone from what you endured. That's justice too. I was once afraid that telling my story would define me. Now I know it freed me. And if you're watching this, if you've ever felt silenced or small or scared, I want you to know something: your story matters. You don't need to be perfect. You need to speak. Because silence doesn't protect the innocent. It protects the powerful. And the moment you speak, everything begins to shift. Subscribe to catch more inspiring stories, because someone out there needs your voice to find theirs. This isn't the end. This is how something better begins.